Every day, you wake up as your own boss, making your own way. Every day, you continue your journey to change the world, your team, and yourself. Every day, you encourage, congratulate, celebrate, and reach toward your goal of being the best and providing the best. The Build Your Best Business Show is for you. The real stories of building a business from other owners and founders along the journey. Find the support and advice you need to successfully start, grow, manage, and exit your business. What are you going to do today to build your best business?
Welcome to Build Your Best Business. I'm Eric Holtzclaw, your host. We talk about the entrepreneurial journey, what it takes to successfully start, manage, grow, and exit a business. My guest today is Chris Heivly. He is an entrepreneur in residence at Techstars and has an awesome background. I was reading about all the things that you've done and companies that you've worked with. So
it's just ADD.
All of us who've done multiple companies, I think, have a little ADD at the end of the day.
For sure.
So for those that are listening and may not be familiar with the term entrepreneur in residence, and they may not know who Techstars is, give us a little bit of idea of both of those.
Sure. Well, Techstars as an entity basically invented or started this idea of an accelerator, which is kind of your new age incubator, which combines investment capital, some structured mentoring, and a 3-month period. And they did that about 10 years ago. It since has grown and exploded, and it's one of kind of the worldwide leader in kind of seed investments and helping entrepreneurs around the world. From everything from running startup weekends and startup weeks to running the Techstars Accelerators in, 25 to 30 different cities around the world, to a venture fund, and now my new role, which is helping startup communities grow.
Got it. Okay. And so Techstars, it's interesting because when I was reading, I thought for some reason they had been founded out of Boston, but they were actually founded out of Denver. So I don't know.
Boulder, Colorado.
Oh, Boulder, Colorado.
Even more.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Tiny little Boulder.
Yeah. And a lot of people talk about them in just sort of the startup accelerator mythology. I've had people on who've told these stories about how they got considered for Techstars by getting a note passed to the right person. It's kind of been this really interesting, mysterious group.
Well, you mentioned what am I doing? What is an EIR? Well, that's the title you give to somebody when they have no idea what the hell you're going to do. And so
I should always take that title.
Yeah, and I'm usually in that state, so it fits well. But the idea here because so many people see Techstars as a model and an organization that there's some really big beliefs that entrepreneurs and investors and mentors, everyone in our tribe kind of get.
Yeah.
And it's about putting the entrepreneur first and in the center of any kind of equation, if you will. And so I've actually spent longer looking at them and calling them and admiring them just like you and I than I've only been with them about 4 months.
Okay. All right. Yeah. It's kind of cool to get to do that and I saw you write for Inc. also. Yes. Yeah. And when I got to start writing for Inc., it was this great thing because I'd always read the magazine and I was so excited when I got the invitation. So talk a little bit about your background. So how did you get into entrepreneurship and what are some of the things that you've done along the way?
Well, other than coming in with my walker and my cane as a very old person, I have to say that I didn't know what an entrepreneur was. I think I was doing it before I knew that it had a name. When I look back on it now, even from a kid, I've always kind of been that person that starts and builds and creates things. In fact, I wrote a book called Build the Fort, which is kind of about building forts and the analogy from fort building to starting a business. So I kind of think that the DNA of an entrepreneur has been with me a long time. I started, when I got out of college, I didn't know that you could start your own business. And so I went to work for companies. But it turns out I was what we may call an entrepreneur. Yeah, okay. And so I built lots of things inside, and I was a rebel, and I was always that guy that was causing problems, just like an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah.
But that's kind of the start of my journey was in larger companies.
Yeah, I talk about I left IBM to go to my first entrepreneurial venture, and the movie The Big Chill one of the friends is an entrepreneur, and his friends say, "Oh, that means you're unemployed."
Yeah.
That's what it used to mean. It
Right.
wasn't this cool thing, right?
Or you don't fit in, or you have a personality disorder or
You
something.
can't keep a job.
Yeah. I have a friend who's a lawyer, and every time I've switched something, which ends up being about every 3 to 5 years, he did one day sit down and said, "Do you have a problem with like authority or something?" And
Maybe.
Probably.
Yeah.
That's just one of the elements of being an entrepreneur.
So talk to us a little bit about some of the companies that are in your past. I looked at, sold one to Rand McNally at some point.
Well, I think the biggie is MapQuest.
Okay.
So I was one of the co-founders of MapQuest. I'm probably the only geographer that you've ever actually interviewed and will interview.
Right.
I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in geography.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is kind of crazy. But what I would add to that is that I knew how to write code as an undergrad. And circa early 80s, that's actually saying something.
Right.
So if you think about a lot of kind of startups or a lot of, big, bold ideas are about combining two things that have never been combined before.
Right.
I was on the early end of combining computers and mapping, and that just was like my sweet spot.
I worked for a professional services organization building out their internet servicing practice, and I followed MapQuest maps everywhere. So that was the thing. I would print them all out and have them with me because I had to get from one place to the next.
We all did, right? It was amazing. Even I look back on it kind of like, wow, we really did that?
Yeah.
We birthed MapQuest in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Home of like 50,000 plus Amish people.
Right.
Obviously the tech capital of the world, right? But again,
and very reliant on maps.
Yeah, well, those horses, they don't know where they're going to go some days. But, we were all kind of map geeks, if you will, and I don't think we knew better. I mean, that was really my first big entrepreneurial kind of steps or journeys, and, probably equally naive, but worked out perfectly for us. And we were just kind of the first, right? So that's what we saw.
And so in the new role, or in the role that you're working with Techstars, you said you're responsible for building community? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so, fast forward some 20-some years later, I happen to be in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, because it's a lot warmer than Chicago and Philadelphia and some of the other places I live.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people, I was starting to read about Y Combinator and Techstars as kind of a new model for kind of starting the earliest phases of starting a business. And I said to myself, boy, that looks pretty cool. I'd been a venture capitalist for a while. I'd been an investor. I've been an entrepreneur. It kind of combines all those things together. And by the way, ADD-wise, if doing one startup is fun, then working with 10 at a time.
Sounds great.
Like, whoa,
absolutely.
count me in.
Right.
So I spent the last 8-9 years helping to build kind of the Raleigh-Durham ecosystem and ran a couple accelerators and reached out to the Techstars people for help and guidance. And they have this give first mentality, and they gave freely of advice and tactics and attitudes, which I really kind of count on as a formative part of how I think today. And very successful in building up that ecosystem to, I think, one of the nation's best in the world, minus Nashville, of course. But
of course, we're in Nashville.
We're in Nashville. We're required to say that.
That's right. Yeah.
But we also believe it to a certain extent. Yeah, so I did that for about 8 or 9 years and had a lot of fun and became a community builder, and had a chance to be sitting with the Techstars and Brad Feld, who's written a book called Startup Communities, as well as others, and sitting with them in December and trying to figure out what my next ADD venture was going to be. And they had a great idea, which is, we've been wanting to do something around startup communities. I don't know what it is. We think you'd be great at it. Would you like to work with us on it?
Very cool. Okay, well, we're going to go to a commercial break, and when we get back, I want to talk a little bit about what that is and what you're doing here at 3686, and just kind of some of the future you see for this ecosystem in general. Because entrepreneurship is this interesting word now, right? What does it mean? How do you get involved? And how do you decide that you would participate in something like Techstars? Like, when is a company appropriate or maybe not appropriate for that kind of accelerator? So,
Sounds
good. Listening to Build Your Best Business. I'm your host, Eric Holtzclaw. We're talking to Chris Heivly. He is entrepreneur in residence with Techstars, coming to you from 3686, and we'll be right back. Congratulations, you're your own boss. Now comes the hard part.
It's not just about starting a business, it's about successfully managing and growing that business to an eventual exit. And along that entrepreneurial journey, you're going to run into questions and problems that you need quick answers to. Things like, do you need a business plan? How do you read a balance sheet? How do you talk to an investor? When do you bring on a founder? Or what if you're having problems with your partner? These are the types of things that you run into as you're trying to grow that business to the next level, and they may not be the things you want to share in public with other people. They're the problems and issues that arise that, as I have experienced along my own entrepreneurial journey, that I needed to have someone I could trust to reach out to and have a conversation and get a different perspective. And it was often those short conversations that would be the thing that moved me from where I was to where I needed to be. It's for that reason I created the On-Demand CXO product offering. On-Demand CXO is something that you can use to have a conversation with a trusted advisor about what's going on in your business. We do a 1-hour phone call to talk about your business, talk about your objectives, and understand what it's going to take to move you from where you are today to where you want to be tomorrow. From there, you have ongoing access to a Slack channel to ask me questions in private about what's going on in your business, so that I can provide some advice or connections to my network to individuals who can help you solve against that problem. You will also have access to my Facebook page, which is full of other entrepreneurs who are along the same journey, to have more broad conversations, things that you trust and would talk about in a networking event. But when you need to go and have that conversation with a trusted advisor, you will have the ability to have a conversation with me in a place that's safe, completely anonymous, and unbiased. I want to see you succeed and build your very best business.
Are you looking to grow your business? Maybe you know exactly who you need to get in contact with, you're just not sure how to go about it. Podcasting is your answer, and at Briller Media, we make you the expert. We have state-of-the-art equipment to record your audio and video podcast. Plus, we take care of everything on the back end. We schedule your guests, upload your podcast to the top podcasting platforms, and we push out your show on social media, promoting you, your business, and your guest's business. How could they ignore your pitch after that? Briller Media, we make you look brilliant.
Sometimes, life gives you crazy ideas. Chase them.
And we're back. You're listening to Build Your Best Business. We're coming to you from 3686 in Nashville. I'm talking with Chris Heivly, entrepreneur in residence at Techstars. I think he and I have a similar background in some of the stuff that we've done or tried to do back in the day, right? Data centers and T1s. It's just so much easier to start a business now. But talking about starting a business, there are often companies that, they'll talk about an accelerator. They'll talk about applying for something like Techstars and things like that. What's the advice you give? Like, when is that appropriate within a company's life cycle? When is it maybe too early? When could it be too late? Tell me about that.
Well, I think the quick, easy answer is it's never too early. I believe your job as a founder of a company, a startup, is to gather all of the resources and put as many oars in the water as possible to figure out how the most efficient way you can grow your company. And, going through an accelerator is just one of those kind of oars. And, you know what, why should you decide when you think the right time is? Why don't you cast, a lot of seeds, or I don't know, I'm mixing analogies here, but, put a lot of seeds in the ground and see which one seems to make sense at that time. Whether it's Techstars or whether it's, raising money from friends and family or ignoring fundraising and building customers or whatever it takes, right? You should be trying to do all the things possible. There's not one playbook. Like entrepreneurs.
I know, and I think that's really an interesting thing that you say, because that's something that people don't understand. Businesses are very different, how you approach it, what you're doing, how you come to market. And I think that there's this hope that exists, and it
Yeah.
doesn't.
I mean, I sit down with entrepreneurs, especially first timers and usually young people, and it's like I have the secret playbook
Right.
underneath my jacket, and it's like if they can just ask me the special words, I'll give them the playbook. And if I knew the playbook, I always think of Back to the Future Part 2 when he has all the answers of the almanac. It's like if I had it, I'd use it for myself, I think.
Right. Well, my daughter's going to school for art, and one of the things I appreciate about the art education is its experimentation.
Yeah.
So she's been told by her teacher that glaze will never work, that etching won't work, and then it does. And so she gets to experiment, right? And in traditional education, not that I'm banging it, right, but there's a right or wrong answer. The math problem is either right or it's wrong. And you have to break that model when you start to think about starting a business and entrepreneurship.
Well, I think the education system, as well as I think the natural human brain development, is we actually learn to limit possibilities, not open up possibilities. And that's one thing I spend a lot of time trying to share with people, is that there's not only one way of looking at things, and experiments are great things. And by the way, failing at experiment is actually more good than bad, right? Yeah. That's not an indicator of your self-worth or anything.
Well, and sometimes in the experiment, when you succeed, you're not sure why. You just often know why you failed.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that worked. Okay, now how do we make that happen? Let's make that work again. So as you here at 3686, are you speaking?
Yes, tonight.
Okay. What's your topic? What are you talking about?
Well, it's an AMA, and Ask Me Anything. So
okay, I love those.
I don't really
That's
exactly.
my favorite kind of speech.
Yeah, me too. Though I'm happy to do the speech thing as well. I usually want to talk about things that interest me now, and what interests me now is a belief that virtually every city, metro, region, whatever geographic boundary term you want to use, should have some part of a startup ecosystem as kind of part of their, the fiber of their place. And that my goal right now is to see what I can do to help every region, regardless of its size or maturity or state in the world, be better at that.
Yeah, it couldn't be. That's an awesome thing to look at. I spend a lot of my time in the Southeast and go into different, Charleston. We're here in Nashville, Atlanta, Chattanooga, and each one has their own special sauce of what would work. And then you need all of them to get the right ecosystem in place anyway. So that's one of the things that we talk about Silicon Valley. We talk about some of these other markets. They see themselves as one continuous group. From San Francisco down to San Jose, it's not us versus them.
Right.
And often we hear that in other places where it's like, well, they've got this in this city. Seeing how you can really capitalize on, does this city know how to do manufacturing really well, or do they know how to do finance?
Well, I think one of the problems is that most of the people, so we have a belief at Techstars that is the entrepreneur is in the center, right?
Right.
And I believe that, and I see that, and maybe it's because I'm an entrepreneur first and an investor and a community builder second.
Right.
In many communities that are led by kind of community builders, they typically come from economic development or government or some entity, and they're trained to compete.
Yeah.
And where your win is my loss, because it's the whole idea of like, I need to recruit that, manufacturing person to put it in my town.
Yeah.
This is completely 180 degrees different.
Right.
And we're not competing for entrepreneurs, right? We're sharing. I mean, Charlie Brock here launched Tennessee. When he and I've gotten to know each other, we talk about that, there's a wide, diverse group of entrepreneurs here today presenting, not just from Nashville or just from Tennessee. And that approach is critical. So
yeah, and talking with regional development groups, there's a little antiquated approach often to bringing companies. And I interviewed one, and I won't mention who it is because he told me this not on air. He said, if I bring a manufacturing company in with 100 jobs that pay $20,000 to $30,000 a year, everybody thinks I'm a hero. But if I go get one that has 20 jobs that pay $150,000 a year, then it's like I wasn't successful, right? And
even though, by the way, that last group will probably spin off more companies.
Absolutely.
Because they have a certain DNA. Yeah.
Economic impact, those kind of things. And it's we just have an old model for looking at a lot of those
Yes, it drives me crazy. But I'm going to change it.
I'm sure you are.
Community
so talking
by
about
community.
the future, let's talk about that. So what's your role, what's your charter, what do you look at towards the future?
Well, see, previous comment, EIR means we don't know what it is yet.
I love it. I may steal it.
And it's a startup inside of this larger organization with all of those kind of typical startup things. So the first thing I'm doing is just what we call customer discovery. And so over the last 4 months, I have talked to probably 125 people in 50 different metros around the world, and to hear their story. The great news, they're all motivated, passionate about building their community, so they're fantastic phone conversations, and they're uplifting. And through all that, we're trying to find a way to engage with 5 or 6 communities this year. This is the MVP, is a very manual. Let's just learn and validate that there's things that we can do. So it's very simple. I'm going into these communities. I'm spending at least 2 weeks on the ground. I get to interview 30 to 40 people around, the entire ecosystem of startup or entrepreneurship. And then out of that, we're going to kind of scorecard where you are versus kind of where other communities are, especially not in a comparative sense, but in terms of here's some of the things you need to work towards. That's your next set of steps. Brad's Startup Communities book has been a Bible to many people, but it's kind of like, okay, now I get it, but what do I do? So we're going to try to help them by inventory assessment, which is a scorecard, and then a roadmap for here's the things you should accomplish over the next year. And I can't tell you what those things are. There's hundreds of things a community could do. But we have, hundreds of man years of experience between myself, Brad Feld, the Techstars team. So we're going to leverage all that together. And if we can do 5 or 6 this year, fantastic.
That sounds like such a fun job. And when you've done this for long enough, that's one of the things I do when I go in and start working with clients through my company. You can just smell what needs to be done, right? You walk in, you're like, oh, if we did this, that would make a dramatic impact on where you guys are and what you need to do next.
Plus, let's face it, it's many times easier to hear it from an outsider than an insider. So, especially one with a brand like ours and all the experience and
cachet with it.
Cachet.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. It's nice.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we've been coming to you from 3686 in Nashville, talking with Chris Heivly. He is the entrepreneur in residence at Techstars. If you need any information on him, you can find it in our show notes. And what are you going to go do next to build your best business?
Every day, you wake up as your own boss, making your own way. Every day, you continue your journey to change the world, your team, and yourself. Every day, you encourage, congratulate, celebrate, and reach toward your goal of being the best and providing the best. The Build Your Best Business Show is for you. The real stories of building a business from other owners and founders along the journey. Find the support and advice you need to successfully start, grow, manage, and exit your business. What are you going to do today to build your best business?